Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, a tavern gaming bill, what's that mean? Oh, you're going to get those punch boards and you'll be able to go into your local bar and your local tavern and do a little gambling. We're going to, and that looks like that's going to be a reality, plus our popular financial literacy update following these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, a tavern gaming bill, I'll get that right, is by this time signed by the governor as we tape this just prior to the Thanksgiving weekend. This program will appear over Thanksgiving weekend. I want to talk with Pittsburgh Post-Gazette reporter Kate Giammarise. She's been all over the Capitol covering some of these big stories. A very controversial piece of legislation passed the legislature. It would allow gaming, small games of chance in Pennsylvania's taverns. I think I got that right, Joy. I'm getting that mostly right.
That sounds about right. So this is a pretty major expansion of gambling in the state. One of the largest expansions in several years. As you mentioned, it was controversial, a little more controversial, I think, in the House than in the Senate. But it, I believe, would allow for about $150 million in new revenue to the state every year. And I think that's, in the end, why a lot of people decided they had to vote for it.
Yeah, I mean, the state, the way it looks now, given the fact that we're going to get less money into health care services, welfare and health care services, maybe as much as $300 million. There's a problem with the tobacco settlement. It looks like the state of Pennsylvania is facing, and we don't know for sure yet, but could be as much as a $500 million deficit in its budget. Is that right?
I don't know the exact number, but it's definitely not a great financial outlook at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, when this was being discussed in the Senate, something that came up was the revenue for, assuming this expansion going forward, that the revenue for this had already been booked into the budget for this year and for next year. They were already counting on
using it. So that may not help. That may not help the problems with the tobacco settlement and the federal government's payments. Yeah.
Well, in the Senate, I mean, it was watching the discussion. It was almost more about, well, should the money go to the general fund or should the money go to the lottery?
Correct.
It wasn't even, should we do this?
Right.
The discussion was all, now, how do we do it, and the details, and where does the money go?
The difficulty, and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago with one of your colleagues, had to do with the fact that private clubs, nonprofits, like VFWs, for example, already have these small games of chance and take it from there.
Well, I mean, they already have these games, and they sort of felt like, there's only so much gambling and gaming to go around, so they were opposed to this expansion, and, they felt like this was sort of their province and has been for many years. I think they were sort of mollified by some changes to the bill that would allow, I think they would now, going forward, be allowed to keep a little bit more of the profits for their own club operations. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they were not super thrilled about this legislation.
Yeah, and the other aspect of it is that the local municipality will get about, I think, 5%. Yeah, 5%. And that local governments, I'm sure, would be glad to have, given the fact that, there's this big debate about property taxes and other aspects of, go ahead.
That's true. And also, though, one thing I want to point out, though, is that some, I think it was the DAs and the law enforcement folks, at least at this point, were a little bit peeved that they felt like there was not any extra funds for enforcement.
So in other words, they're going to have to be careful that if we go to raffles and pull tabs and daily drawings, these are three aspects that are covered in the bill, that could mean their jobs of policing, if you will, not regulating, but monitoring them to see that they don't put games in they're not allowed to have. Right.
Yeah. So they felt like that was not being addressed.
All right. We're going to run to a quick break. When we come back, there's changes proposed by the Corbett administration to the food stamp program. We're trying this week on the program to talk about some aspects of change that's taking place in our state that we don't cover routinely. We often talk about transportation, liquor privatization, pensions. These are pretty important issues to a lot of people, and we'll be back with more.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Business Council Education Foundation, educating citizens and business leaders about important public policy issues and civic affairs. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by BetterSaferRoads.com. To voice your support for safer highways and less traffic congestion, visit BetterSaferRoads.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, Kate Giammarise from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, who's a Capitol Hill reporter watching the legislature, and of course the executive branch is with me today. We're chatting about a number of changes that are taking place in Pennsylvania. We talked about small games of chance going into bars and taverns, controversial, but Pennsylvania, in my humble judgment, does have a gaming culture, to put it mildly. Kate's also been involved in following the Corbett administration's efforts to modify some aspects of the food stamp program. And this is a big, big program. Over 1 million Pennsylvanians collect food stamps, and it's a big program. It costs a lot of money. And Kate, when the Corbett administration talks about repealing an asset test, what does that mean? Okay,
well, so say if you go in to apply for food stamps, you're already subject to an income test. You have to have an income below a certain level to be eligible. But as of last year, there was what's called an asset test instituted, where they're also examining, for everyone who applies, they examine your assets. Do you have a home? Do you have a car? Do you have a savings account? Mm-hmm. And you have to have assets below a certain level to be eligible. Now, so that was instituted last year, and as part of a sort of an overall re-examination of the department, they've said this is something we may consider doing away with. It's not a done deal yet. They're definitely still examining it.
That's controversial, isn't it?
It is controversial. Well, it was controversial when it went in place last year. A lot of states, have done away with the asset test. And the thinking behind that is because it discourages savings. And it was also controversial because it's a quite an added paperwork burden for both the applicant and for the county assistance offices who have to process these applications. And as I said,
I just checked your writing. 1.8 million Pennsylvanians are receiving food stamps.
That's correct.
What are there 12 million of us?
So it's a lot of people.
Yeah, and give our viewers a sense about who these people are.
Well, I believe of that it's a good portion, something like close to half are children, and lots of elderly and disabled, and people who are working, but maybe they are working at a job that doesn't pay a living wage. So it is a lot of people in our state, though.
And we're talking here also about a poverty level for a family of four set at roughly $23,500, and that part of it hasn't been controversial. I mean, I think that's a federal poverty level figure, right?
Right.
All right. Well, let's so to bring this bit to conclusion, where does this stand now? The governor has to.
Well, basically what they've said is we're looking at this. We're looking at a lot of programs. They haven't given any kind of timeline. They've said when we reach a conclusion or a decision, if we think something needs to be changed, we would talk to the governor and go from there. Okay. And it does not take an action by the legislature, correct? That's my understanding. The legislature didn't do anything to put it into effect last year. It was an administrative decision. Yeah. All right. Well, look, I want to thank you for coming in. It's been a busy couple of weeks in the legislature as this program airs over Thanksgiving weekend. We'll see where they go moving forward. At any rate, coming up is our popular financial literacy update. We have a lot of those good tips
on how to save your money, put it in your wallet, save it, I think, and don't go spend it. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, it's now time for our popular financial literacy update. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to take a look at, how about some suggestions for you for the new year, 2014? Are you quite prepared to say, I'm going to change what I do when I'm dealing with finances and credit cards and budgeting? I couldn't have two better guys to talk about that. Pat Conway, he's the CEO of the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. A new guy on the block too, right?
That's right. Just about a month now, Terry.
Yeah, well, congratulations. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
And a guy who's been here since, well, before the fall of the Roman Empire. I'm just kidding. Mike Wishnow, he's a senior VP, and Mike has been, over the years, extraordinarily helpful in the tips that I think are very, very important when we talk about financial literacy update. All right, Mike, I want to start with you. Give us some sense about what it looks like for holiday spending.
Well, the National Retail Federation just put something out saying that they expect spending to increase somewhere around 3 to 5%. And frankly, consumers are optimistic. The biggest increases are going to be internet-based.
Internet-based.
And as you know, as this airs, Black Friday, Thursday, Wednesday have already passed.
Yeah, it's almost like we're starting Christmas and Labor Day, but that's another matter. We can talk about that later. Yeah, there's a big change going on. I mean, more and more people buying online, lots of deals with the social networking with Twitter and Facebook. On my pages, I get all these ads now. It's relatively new. So what's going on? Is that going to be a new trend? Does that affect credit unions in some way? I mean,
well, we do expect the internet shopping to continue to increase this coming year, and as Mike said, we expect 3 to 5% growth in terms of holiday shopping compared to last year. But really, what's driving that? The big driver is the internet traffic that we're going to see. So, I think it should be a good season. The holiday season's going to be a little shorter than last year. Just the way the holidays fall.
Yeah, that's right. So in addition to that, Pat, it looks like from some of the data that employers may be actually doing some holiday season hiring because of these increases. Is that possible?
Yes, it is. Employers are adding jobs through the holidays. We expect that trend to continue permanent positions after the holidays as well.
I wonder, the other maybe aspect of this that's worth mentioning is, and I don't want to put the jinx on it, but is the stock market has up, considerably this year, and that means that there may be more available money for people to maybe do the big ticket purchasing.
Well, sure, and even if it's not available money, Terry, the stock market is a bellwether to consumer confidence. Yeah. So as the stock market gets better, we feel better about the economy.
Right.
And if we feel better, we tend to be a little more liberal in our spending, right, Pat?
Yeah,
absolutely. I think there's a pent-up demand as well, which will manifest itself in increased shopping, people dining out more frequently, perhaps through the holidays as well.
But one of the things that we've talked about over the years, and I think it's pretty important, is though people should spend, obviously 2/3 of the economy is based on consumer spending. We all agree about that, and it's important. But there's also has to be a relationship between your spending and your debt. And over the years, we've talked about that all the time, about making sure that the debt we create is you can pay it off, that you don't get yourself into difficulty. So that's another concern, correct?
Absolutely.
That you folks have had over the years.
Yeah, oh, certainly. I mean, 2/3 of folks still carry debt from month to month, are not paying off their credit cards
in a reasonable
regularly.
time?
No, completely month to month.
Month to month.
So they're paying interest on credit cards. 2/3 of us are.
Yeah.
So obviously, what you don't want to do as you go into the holiday season is feel better. Therefore, you put more on your credit cards, and guess what? Come 2014.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, we're going to give you 4 tips to holiday spending. You know, go buy, but make sure you don't spend too much. We'll be back.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, we're talking about financial literacy update. It's our popular financial literacy update, and here we go. We're going to start with 4 tips to keep holiday spending in check. I'm going to start with Michael for the first tip. What's the first tip?
Well, set a budget that you can't bust. And frankly, you should have already done that if you've begun shopping. You know, put a budget together and say, I'm not going to exceed X based on what I have to spend this holiday season.
Not even if there's a sale out there and you can get a deal, right?
Correct.
All right, good point. All right, there's something called Surf Smart, whatever that is. I think I know what that is. And we're not talking about getting a board and going out on the water, right? Go ahead.
Exactly. Well, use the internet. Shoppers can use the internet to find the best price. So if you're looking for a particular gift in your, out in a retail store, in a shopping mall, the enticing displays can really tempt you to spend more than you've budgeted. So as Mike said, establish a budget, use the internet to find the best price, and stick with your budget.
Yeah. I noticed in recent years when we get to the third choice, and I think this is really growing, I know in my own household we do this a lot, and it has to do with gift cards.
Absolutely. One of the sure ways to get on a budget is to buy gift cards. Because if you're going to spend $25 on that person or $50 on that person, that's what you're going to put on the gift card. And believe me, everybody likes gift cards. Yeah. People don't return gift cards.
Yeah, well, that's true. The problem I have with some of them is that they don't have the amount, and if the people don't tell you, I'm never sure, when you give it to a clerk or somebody and they say, no, you're over the amount. Now you owe another $50 or $60 for a bill. So I've had a couple, and I can't even if I know the amount, I can't always figure out what I've spent. So that's another
there you go.
But that's good. More gift cards. All right, what's this one? Revamp your list? What's that about?
Well, when you're in the holidays and you've got a long list of folks within your family, your friends to shop for, sometimes you can reevaluate your shopping strategy. Do you have to have a gift for every niece and nephew? Can you do a gift exchange within your family? Those are ways to sort of keep an eye on the bottom line as well.
I know if you have 10 people, put all the names in a hat and you buy for one and not for all 10. Is that your point? That's a good idea. I mean, I think we all get in, you get into the celebratory mood where you want to, you're out shopping, well, I'll buy this, I'll buy that, something that Mike was just talking about, that pretty soon you've spent a lot more, right, than you anticipated doing.
That's exactly right, especially if you do it on Christmas Eve. Don't wait until the last minute to do your shopping.
That's not on this list, but I like that one a lot. Don't go. And you're saying that could be a male thing, a guy thing, maybe?
I think that could be, yes.
All right. This is very important, and it's something over the years we've provided these tips for. Mike, I'll start with you. Resolutions for 2014. Now's the time to make them. Let's go through them. One, what about a budget?
Well, sure. At the beginning of the year, we all make resolutions, right? We're going to lose weight. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. So financial resolutions make a whole lot of sense. And the beginning of the year is a perfect time to sit down and do a written budget. There are software packages out there that can help you do this now. It's much easier. Many credit unions offer them. I know some banks offer them.
Sure.
And just take inventory of where you spend your money and make sure it aligns with your priorities.
Now, talking about that, you also recommend establishing a relationship with a financial institution, right?
Absolutely. You know, a lot of Americans are unbanked. For those that are, you really need a relationship with a credit union or a bank, you know, a financial institution that can help you as you look at your financial management. You know, you've got to really have a budget, a monthly budget. You've got to look at an annual budget as well. 40% of Americans say they live beyond their means.
Yep.
If you don't have a roadmap and a budget, you know, it's going to be difficult to live within your means.
All right. Another one has to do with something, Michael, that you and I have talked about for years, and that's debt.
Yeah. You know, as a culture, we spend what we don't have. And most of us are carrying consumer debt. The average American has more than $15,000 in consumer debt. That could be credit card debt. That could be personal lines of credit. So it's always good to look at your debt, to see what the interest rates are, to see how you can pay it down more quickly, because frankly, debt is the opposite of building wealth.
Yep. So in relationship to that, and we sort of joked about it earlier, or not joked, but chatted about it, whether buy or save, and you would say save and...
It's important to save. You know, most Americans now are planning to work in their retirement, you know, which may not be their choice, frankly, but it may be necessity, because people aren't saving the way they were decades ago.
And we're working, and actually now we're working much longer, in large part, I think, because we haven't saved. Is that correct? I mean, we just don't, people are just Social Security, you know, that's it. You work longer.
That's right.
It's not going to get any better, I think. All right, the final one. Teach your children about finances.
Boy, couldn't we do a whole show on that?
Yeah, we have, right?
Right. You know, commit yourself to give your children the best gift you can, which is the ability to understand finances, the ability to understand wants versus needs, and teach them to save. As Pat said, you know, pay yourself first. Put a little bit away, whether you have chore money, whether you have a part-time job, whatever it may be. Start those savings habits young, because frankly, the habits that they get when they're young will carry throughout their life.
Yeah, and the other thing that I want you guys to come back when we get into the new year is to talk about what we're doing with teaching and how we should implement additional school programs. Mike, you folks have great programs on that. At any rate, thanks for coming in. Wonderful updates. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.